to Upstage Downstage with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
Things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
Take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing The Importance of Being Earnest. We saw this production at the Mansfield Palace on the 30th of May 2024. This hit production is brought to you by Say It Again Sorry Theatre Group, straight from the Edinburgh Fringe Festival on their UK tour, incorporating a small amount of script and a vast amount of improv. So when a traditional production of Oscar Wilde's classic play gets underway, everything seems to be going well until the lead actor fails to arrive on cue and the theatre company needs you to jump in and save the show. So Richard, what's it all about?
You might think you know the chaotic story of love, mistaken identity and double lives, but you have never seen it like this before. Filled with wicked Wildean wit and bursting with bun-burrying, join them for a hilarious and unpredictable twist on the world's favourite comedy classic.
But first, our post-show opinion!
The best improvisation of being earnest.
Superb, spontaneous shenanigans.
So with all that said, let's...
Set the scene!
Richard, would you like to set the scene for The Importance of Being Earnest by, sorry, say it again, Theatre Company? Say it again, sorry, Theatre Company.
Do you want me to say it now or do you want me to say it again?
I don't know. They need to say it again.
I'll say it again.
Sorry.
Sorry, what? Okay. I mean, we walked into the auditorium and the curtains were shut. So we didn't know what to expect until we were sat there. There was some backtrack of the Bridgerton soundtrack, which was just playing modern hits on string quartets. So we were basically presented with that. But when the curtains opened, we were presented with your sort of traditional amateur dramatics set for Importance of Being Earnest. So it was just a section of I'd probably say 5 flats with the middle flat with a door built into it that was to show a drawing room of a house, really, and that's all we were shown, and that was the beginning, really. On the walls there was pictures, there was a mirror, there was curtains and a window. Well, it looked like a window, but it actually turned into a picture frame behind that curtain. So yeah, that was really what the set makeup was, really.
There was a sofa and to one side and a piano to the other.
Yeah.
So was it stage left, the piano?
Yeah, it was stage left, and
stage
behind
right,
that there was a fireplace that it built into the flat at the back behind it, and a circular window with a crossed window that sort of break up in the middle of it.
Where? Above the door?
Above the door, yeah.
Yeah.
Your sort of porthole window that you'd see in a lot of big houses. And then,
so that's the staging of it.
Yeah.
And it started with the 2 actors.
And I'd say, I use the words amateur dramatic because it's almost, you can tell it's a touring piece of theatre, as in it folds down flat, it folds the way.
And it's come from Edinburgh Fringe as well.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
So the production started off with 2 actors in their fineries talking about, setting the scene for waiting for Ernest to arrive. He doesn't arrive. The director then comes out into the audience and starts talking and panicking, and then we start getting the choosing of the audience member to become Ernest. And that's how this play is then carried on. So it's a whole show of improv where they start getting audience members to play the characters. And it starts off with Ernest, and then it builds up with Cecily, I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
And then in the second act, there's pretty much the whole of the cast has been played by the audience members.
Yeah.
By using improv skills. So let's talk about the writing a little bit. In essence, it's taking the plot points of the script and throwing away, I say, probably 90% of what is written.
Totally.
So you keep in the good elements of well-known lines and phrases and quotes like Lady Bracknell's a handbag and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So it's those that are very familiar and to the play, and all the nitty-bitty sort of a stuff is done by various improvs.
Yes, exactly.
So it's a different one to discuss, because when we're talking about the direction of it, there was like the guy playing the director actually directing as well. So it was more made up on the spot, because he said at the very beginning, acting is what? It's reacting. So that sets the scene for what the audience members, if they do get chosen to portray these characters, to be reacting to everything they do. So all the improv games that they sneakily hide within the text of the plot of this, they get to live out.
I think as well there's a moment right at the start where you've got Algernon and Lane starting the script as it starts in the actual production itself without the improv, and they get to the point where they go to the door which should be open by Ernest, and he doesn't appear. And then you have all this moment where you have the selection of the cast, the person to be Ernest, and then they have to redo that scene again. So you've not even got past the first page really, and they're still, repeat. And there's a few other scenes where they repeat the script a few times, but it's like I say, it's only key bits that they use, but they reuse them more than once just to create more comedy effects, really.
So the first improv was getting Ernest to answer Lane, and who was the other character?
And Algernon.
Yeah, so it was getting him to be part of the scene. So, for example, they'll ask a simple question, and it relies on that person to give an answer. Even if it was like a yes or no one, if he says no, they'd then run with it. You were quite right. Yes, you were right there for saying yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if he said it was wrong.
Yeah.
And just so they can carry it along, and then that gets a laugh. And to move people about, the actors would stand there with their arms open to indicate that person that they're with, when they're talking to that character like Ernest, walk around. So then that'll indicate to the audience member, okay, so I need to be
over there,
under his shoulders,
or
under his arms.
Or there might be a little head movement that's like, bring him over here, come over here, It was all subtleties, and it was interesting, the selection process of Ernest as well, because the director was clever in getting more than one person standing up and almost testing the waters to see how each person would react, to see if it was which one would be the best person to play Ernest as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was, and I think that sort of guided the choice whether he would get the reaction from the person that he chose. So it's quite an interesting process, really.
Yeah, and then we moved on to Cecily. No, not Cecily. Cecily.
Yeah, Cecily. I think the other thing as well, there was just a moment before that, it was little things like they asked Ernest what his brother died of or whatever, and he said train crash, and then he says, "Oh, tuberculosis," and it was just clever. Like, we're still going to get the words in that are in the script, but actually, whatever Ernest said changed the pathway of where we were going. Of the production almost.
Yeah. Is there anything else you can remember? I mean, it was today.
Depends which.
Well, this is why we shouldn't talk about it in the car if we're going to do it straight away.
But I think if we need to move on to the cast members, because we don't need to break it down fully for everything he did, do we, on that first?
No,
scene?
I wasn't. No, but the thing is, it's about the improv. I'm not bothered
all
the little bits. We can talk about the improv.
The other thing I'd probably say is there was a clever bit as well where Lane was feeding Ernest the lines, looking as a butler, looking like he was sweeping the back of his shoulders, like behind him, telling him what to say, whispering, as he was making sure his jacket was dust free and this, that, and the other. Where Ernest was talking to Algernon but being fed the lines from behind, and it was just funny how it can be misinterpreted because the whispers can be just not enough, and he'll blurt something out. And it just creates that bit of humour as well.
And later on when they did audition two ladies to play the part, and they managed to find this one woman to do it. On one particular scene, she was handed a script to read from it, and that's when Lady Bracknell was on the whiskey. She was on the hard stuff, so she was drinking, and she was making them. She poured the canister into the teapot. So then, when it came to them doing the tea scene, she kept making them redo it and just getting this woman to redo her lines to make it sound bigger and better, just so she can have more of the...
And her line would say,
alcohol.
Another tea? And it's like,
and they did that a few times, didn't
and
they?
they kept drinking Jack Daniels that had been filled, the teapot had been filled with.
Yeah, and it was Algernon again who was talking to Ernest to get him to say at the same time of... it's another like a little game of improv where you say what your real name is, and then he delivers a line said at the same time, but it does it at a quite a fast pace as well. And it happens in pantomime as well. Yeah. But because the person didn't know what was going on, it got repeated and repeated and repeated until he finally understood that he needed to say the line. Yeah. At
Eventually
the same
got there.
Pace as the guy. Yeah.
I think the other thing is like it was the moments where when Ernest was chosen, and when all the other cast members were chosen, they all disappeared off stage to get ready and get mic'd up, get a sort of costume on that would fit anybody almost. Yeah. And then they'd come back out, but there was always something happening while that was happening, so you'd never really saw the difference between. There's always a misdirect or something happening, a few smoke and mirrors to like just show you, we'll do this bit of funny while they're getting ready to walk back out again. Or and I think the other thing was there was a lovely bit where that
was mostly down to Josh as well, doing a bit of the non-speaking stuff.
Josh being the stagehand and the crew member that was always, doing everything he needed to do to sort people out. The other bit was the nice bit between Gwendolyn and Ernest, where Gwendolyn said, "Oh, you've got something in your pocket for me."
Oh yes, yeah. And he pulled out his actual wallet.
And it was actually a ring. And he pulled out his wallet because he didn't know what she meant. And they said, "No, in your jacket."
It was from the jacket that he had actually been given.
And he didn't realise there was something planted in the jacket, and it actually turned out to be a ring. And then he had to propose to her, and he just.
But then he broke the fourth wall and said to his wife, "Oh, sorry about this." And then the director then shouted out, "Don't break the fourth wall, Ernest." Yeah. So there's a load of those comedy moments there. Yeah. Just within the improv thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And there was another bit where Algernon was lying down in the I think it was scene Act 2, lying down in the garden with Cecily and Ceciline, and he was trying to get her to throw grapes into his mouth. I mean, she managed to do it, but it was one of them where it's you're trying to get the audience member to do something more outlandish, or you trying to direct them by not directing them, but by giving them words to move. Yeah, exactly. Around the stage. Yeah. So that was quite fun to see. Yeah. And then she gets given a letter.
It was and it was the hide and seek bit. It was
behind the bushes.
I'm going. You turn around and count, and then I'm going to hide. And it was just...
that's another thing, because she never actually did that. The actor then was moving around the set as if he was like sneaking about, so she still couldn't find him. But she didn't particularly like play up to that. But it was one of them things where that could have been really funny had she have like followed his footsteps, because a lot of this is, if you're going to do stuff like that, like the dancing, you react by following, you copy their movements, you follow them in tow, because then they're not going to be laughing at the actor doing it, but they're going to be laughing at the audience member cock it up, or, definitely, because it's about like making them do something they wouldn't normally do. Another little bit of improv was the fight scene, the sword fighting. That was quite fun as well, because whilst who was it? Algernon again.
It was Algernon in Ernest.
Yes, I was just checking to make sure it was. Whilst Algernon was pulling out the sword for him to do this combat fight, he pulled out a pretend sword as well and flung it towards Ernest, who caught it. So therefore, one was sort of like without a weapon, and then he was like chucking that about, and the other one had to react to that. So that was sort of like another improv.
And they did little bits where they improv. You know, the sword scene was meant to be sort of face on when they were doing the fight, and there was moments where Algernon just went across stage at nobody, and
that was a way of
Ernest
trying to move the person about.
The person should have been there, and he was not in the right place. So he just carried on like, I'm going to fight with you and not face you, and until Ernest cottoned on. It needed to line up and be there, and it was just...
And then lie on the floor, because actually he's been going to be stabbed.
Yeah.
So, which he did in the end. He lay on. He was like a good sport.
And then in the next minute, when he stood up and he admitted defeat, there was the hand put through the bush with a note where it's basically his next part of the script, but it was a folded piece of paper to imitate a bird. That was just another little cue, really.
Yeah.
And then it turned out to be the wrong script. It was a Harry Potter speech. And it just had nothing to do with the play at all. But it was, and I think that explains the misdirects or the little almost Easter eggs that were in this that have all been planted around. And if they're done wrong or not prepared, and the cast aren't in on it, then you've got you lose an element of humour from that.
There's quite a lot of lots of different improv games being used within this.
Yeah.
And like reading the idiot boards, but the idiot boards were cues which ended up being rude words because they were like half a word chopped up. Yeah. So they was waiting for the next board to shine up before you finished the sentence off. So
exactly.
A couple of like...
it's almost like you don't want to give it away, because if you go and see it, you miss that element, you know.
Yeah, like if someone's saying, oh, you know, I'll wait for her to give me a dick, and then waiting for the rest of it for tation or something. Yeah. For the next bit of that. So overall, with this production, what do you think about how they managed to get the plot points and stuff through the 3-act play through to the finish line?
I think they did well, and I think, you know, obviously we don't really want to talk about every element of this to tell you all the bits that go off, because it would spoil you going to see it, which I'd urge you to do. But there was like the in the second half, in the improv bit, to speed the storyline ahead, we one of the audience members became a narrator, and you had somebody improvise. It was actually Reese Tees, who basically came out in a black leotard and did a whole improv scene which sped the storyline along to fill some of the plot points in. And that came out of nowhere almost, and it actually helped just make sure that each scene had got all the key elements in it. It was like, let's do Importance of Being Earnest in 10 minutes, really. Yeah. You know, even though it was a production that lasted a normal production length, you know, everything was done quick and to the point.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're here for the drama. So here we are to discuss the actors. What I would say is this is a great way of being an actor to be paid, but yet not doing the production, because you're getting the audience members to do the production for you. It takes a lot of skill to do that. And I think hats off to the audience members who went up there and did it and performed. It was good sports of them. And, you know, they took to it. Some of them took to it like they enjoyed being in the limelight as well and being involved. And it helped when the actors are trying to do the improv to feed off the actors that they're using, so the audience members, that they were actually embodying the characters in terms of moving, making hand gestures for them to reply and react to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also it's important to mention that, well, it's important to be in earnest, but it's also important to mention that there's also a fine line with how much you use an audience in your production, because it could come across that, well, what are you actually doing if we're doing the work? You know, or it could put people off if you pick the wrong people in the audience. So it was nice to see that some of the ways they almost extracted people out of the audience that were game for the production were through either recommendation or somebody had pointed them out that was next to them, so they knew they were a game for a laugh. They just needed a little push to get out on stage. So, and there's always going to be some people that will go, "I'll have a go," or there's always those hecklers in the audience that were joining in with the there was the odd time where you'd have somebody be the person that would say it's behind you or shout it out. So they're more likely to get involved than somebody that was quiet. You've got to read an audience, and I thought they did it really well where they picked a good mix of people.
Especially when the audience members themselves say, "Oh, we do pantomime here," or we do, we're involved in this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
So that's why we ended up with a load of like pantomime references being thrown out. Or whatever.
Exactly.
And so it makes each show that they do unique to the place that they're in.
And
as well.
it's actually a credit to the cast that they went through with that. They didn't just shut down those like panto moments, or they actually encouraged it but controlled it. They still managed to keep on script, but they knew the storyline and the plot that they were going through, so they still managed to rein it back when they needed to. And I thought it was little things like, just as much as getting the audience to ask in the second half, ask earnest questions. And pass the microphone down the line of people for a question and answer session.
And that's hot seating.
And that was complete hot seating.
Because he's been used as an actor, tell us about your character, and then getting the audience members to do that.
So he's having to improv with his own audience, and it was like, but it was fascinating.
But he went
to
along
watch.
with it.
Yeah, they just did it, and I think.
And it was fun that they actually chose a man to play Lady Bracknell.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a sort of like a dame character coming out, and he actually did a really good job.
Yeah,
at
he did,
as well.
and he took to it, and he didn't. I think everybody that they chose were all up for
even down to the piano player. But
Totally.
it was quite funny how by the end of the second act, you had a completely it was recast. Pretty much everyone was like, and I had a feeling that's where they were going to go.
Yeah, because it was interesting where you thought, oh, we've only had 2 additional cast members from the audience up to the interval,
but
and
by
then
that
it was
time,
like, we're going to ramp it up now.
But then by that time, they'd set the seeds of one of the ladies of actually being drunk that she can't get words out, and the other one that she's lost her voice. Yeah, and the other one had hurt his arm. So therefore, it just got to the point where we're going to have to pick on the audience again.
And I thought one thing I thought was really, really nice was, I know I'm jumping ahead, but the bows at the end, they all bowed with a cast member that they'd recast, or they'd brought an audience member and a cast member, all took the limelight together, so it became
as it should
production.
be.
But it worked really well because there was one person for everybody almost. It was, they'd recast it that much that everybody was replaced almost.
Yeah. Props wise,
I mean, prop placement, prop
and costume
use was brilliant. Costumes were of the period. They were outlandish, and then the ones that the audience members wore, they were simple. They were basically quick to put on and made in a way that they could tighten them or expand them for different body shapes. It was a little bit like the dame costume. They knew that they could change it to make it work
all
for
sizes,
anybody.
Yeah.
And every it had the impact.
Or like the vicar and the woman as well.
Yeah, exactly.
They got replaced.
Yeah. So no, it worked really well, and props were all there. The props were the things you expected to see in the production,
especially in like Act 2 when after the questions, and he goes to take to his area, his wherever it is, his spot. The set ended up changing in terms of like the mood, because they had like the lighting and stuff once they had everything. They did. They had the candles and everything. And I suppose that leads us neatly into the technical section of this, doesn't it?
Moving on to our next segment, as we say,
what the tech is this?
For the technical thing, the greatest changes was mostly when it became using the spotlights to pick an audience member.
That was hilarious.
And also when it became for the 2 ladies to have their moment to audition.
Yeah.
They said, well, you're in the spotlight now. You start doing your monologue there. So there's a lot of spotlights for them to find. the light. But it's mostly in Act 2 where I felt it changed when they had the introductions of the candles and the party scene. I think that was was that Act 1 actually?
Was that
It was lying down, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was in the garden.
It was in lying down in the garden. Yeah. So it must have been that one then. Yeah, because it sort of went into like the dance-esque ballroom thing, didn't it?
Yeah, because obviously this production originally would have been very much a brightly lit front room. Everything happened in the drawing room. Nothing really left that room. In the there was sounds off stage, but there was never really anything else. Whereas this production, a little bit like we saw in Pride and Prejudice, sort of, they threw it into the mix where you had colour use, and they'd almost have mirror balls up, and it just, they used pink lights to signify love scenes, and they used a lot of colour on the flats to just change it a little bit and just have fun. I think this production allowed them to have fun with it a little bit more, because it stood up against those sort of comedy productions that, can take a script that is actually a classic and an old script and just play with it, and just, they've got, there's no rules in this one because they've completely changed it and edited it how they want, really. There wasn't really any sound effects.
Popping of the
the bottle popping,
the champagne. At the very beginning when they redid everything,
and the doorbell,
they'd already used all the physical stuff.
Yeah. So they went through it again because of that. But other than that, there wasn't really anything. I suppose there was the dance scene and the fight scene. They used some music to go in the background of that. But overall, it was...
I think just because it relied so much on telling the story and directing the audience members to become actors, they focused more on that and just having the extra bits to support what they were doing. Specifically like the follow spots.
Yeah. And it was like the set.
They need to do everything else.
Yeah.
Well, that's it as a basic set.
The set was just to reinforce the fact of where they were. It was a location rather than it wasn't really, it didn't need to be outlandish and over the top, because it was about what happened rather than,
And like when you were comparing it to Pride and Prejudice, sort of, it is very much the same thing, only this is taking more risks because the whole production relies on the audience members.
Yeah, it does, yeah. This is breaking the distance between the audience and the stage. And we talk about breaking the fourth wall, which some people really struggle with, that productions struggle with. Whereas this did it in such a nice way where you felt like you were comfortable in that space,
And now it's time for
Rewind, Rewatch.
Well, I mean, rewind, rewatch. We couldn't really rewind and rewatch this production because it will never be the same again. So it'd be interesting to see it again with a different audience.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to, I'd just like to see it again. Just how I can see that the production would change every night, and it must be great for the cast to have fun with it.
Depends how rowdy the audience members are.
Totally.
I mean, the Mansfield Palace Theatre, that was quite a medium-sized theatre, so I don't think it had that many people, but it felt more cosy and intimate.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas if this was done in a larger theatre, like the Playhouse, for example, it'd be interesting to see how that changes on a bigger stage with more people. Would it have the same effect?
Yeah, because and also if you take it up to like Theatre Royal size, if you had it in a larger space as well, it may struggle to connect with a bigger audience, maybe. But then by sort of process of elimination, you probably have more people that would be up for it because you've got more people in the audience to get involved, maybe.
Moving on to our final segment, as we say,
Call this a show?
Okay, so to sum up, I wasn't expecting much from this production. It started off like this could go one or two ways. I was thinking, this could be a bit cringy as well. I didn't know what was going on, but then it just got so many laughs, so many things just went right throughout that it just started like a snowball effect where it just got bigger and bigger and better.
Yeah, exactly.
With each audience member that participated, really. And it was one of those shows where it solely relies on the audience members to work and how they react. And I think it's a good show and a good way of just showing what actors have to do and how to act, and saying acting is reacting.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's exactly what this was.
Totally.
The key to this is just to react.
Yeah, from my perspective, to summarise, I think it's a great entry-level piece of theatre for people who aren't used to watching theatre. It actually opens your eyes to see there's not much difference between me and the person on stage. I can do that if I think about it, and it also shows how hard work it is as an actor. So it's a bit of both, really. I'm just glad it had a really mixed audience in the room, where they were open to doing something a bit different. And like you say, I never stopped laughing. There was loads of funny moments, and you could tell some of the funny moments were improvised or things just by what had been said by the people that were on stage that weren't the actors. But the cast went with it and acted with it, and they improvised so much that I can imagine that they in some areas of the country, they might have to do a lot of heavy lifting to actually make this production work. But they're now seasoned enough, you can tell that they'd still create a great show just from, even if somebody was deadpan on stage, they'd still be able to make fun out of it. And they were just a class act. What can I say?
And just to add to that, I would have loved to have been on there. Yeah. However, like everything, whenever you're getting picked on, just the anxiety, and it's like when they're like, who can we pick on out of the audience? It's like, not me, don't look at me. Trying anything I can just to hide and blend into the wall behind me. Yeah. But secretly afterwards, when you know that actually it's not too bad, like, I could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
So I'd have to probably just go to the next one.
And see it.
Put my hand up. I'll do it. I know what's going on here.
I'm going to join in.
That's it, yeah. What are my 3 magic words?
Lichfield, here we come.
That's it, yeah. Yeah, that'd be quite fun, actually. Do our own little bit of improvisation.
Exactly.
You could be Lady Bracknell.
Yeah, of course.
Be Ernest.
With my reputation.
Scores then, please, Richard, for The Importance of Being Earnest. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being an improvised production Oscar would go wild about, and 1 being left in a handbag at Sutton Parkway railway station. What's it going to be?
I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10, because it was worth it.
Absolutely, and it's a 10 out of 10 from me as well. So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be?
It's a standing ovation from me, but I didn't stand it because I thought I might end up on it on stage.
And it's a standing ovation from me as well. So there we are. That's our discussion of The Importance of Being Earnest. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Stay tuned as we bring you more of our thoughts
and opinions
on many theatrical delights in future episodes.
If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of
Upstage Downstage.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing the importance of being earnest. Can we have quiet in the studio, please? I'm trying to do my best here, my best theatrical work on this podcast, and you're sat there munching away on your bloody chocolate bars. We saw this production at Mansfield's Palace. We saw this production at
the Mansfield Palace.
Because I can't go from the S to the field.
Mm-hmm.
With my teeth. We saw this production at the Mansfield Palace on the 30th of May 2024.
You put an S after field. Mansfields.
We saw this production at Mansfield Palace.
Filled with wicked Wildine wit and bursting with bunburying. Yeah. Filled with wicked Wildine wit and bursting with bunburying.
Wildian.
Wild,
isn't it? Wild.
Oh yeah, well, Wildian. I don't know. I might be well read, but I'm not. I don't read all the classics.
Who's read you?
Oh, girl.
Read you for filth.
Oh, filth. Filled with wicked Wildian wit and Wildian. That was right, wasn't it?
Oscar Wilde, so Wilde.
Yeah, all right. Wildine.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being an improvised production Oscar would go wild about, and 1 being left in a handbag at Sutton Park Railway Station. What's it going to be? I'm going to have to say that again.
No, because you delayed.
All right. I knew I got it wrong. And 1 being left in a handbag at Sutton Parkway Railway Station. What?
Sutton Parkway Railway Station.
You got to get your bloody lips out. Do you want to do these?
Can do if you want. No, right.
And 1 being left in a handbag at Sutton Park Railway Station.
Sutton Parkway.
1 being left in a handbag at Sutton Park Railway. 1 being left in a handbag at Sutton Parkway Railway Station.
No, you're rushing it.
1 being left in a handbag at Sutton Parkway. But I'd said that the first time round and it was wrong.
You delayed it the first time.
I had to get my lips round it. So that before. Go on, score.
Oh, you want the score now? Are you going to pause it so you know? No, doesn't matter.
No, so we're doing it live.